I'm so happy to have on Tim Young, or as you know him on X, Tim runs your mouth, or Tim runs his mouth, or one of
Oh
those
boy, this
tweets
has
are.
started. Here we go. It's already started. Let's have fun. Let's do this. I do that, by the way. I confused. There is a member of Congress who has a very similar name. I think it's, and I can't remember, Northam or something like that.
Ralph
And it's very,
Northam.
yeah, and he's very similar in name to the former governor of Virginia, Northam, or candidate. And I just screwed it up like 17 times in an interview once on national radio. It was fine.
Wow. Well, I'm sorry, I kind of fluked that
No,
one
no,
there.
no, 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 no. There's no apologizing because I am not a real person. Like I really am just kind of like I don't have any kind of ego, and I always screw around with people. So like, dude, we're gonna have fun. Let's have fun. And
Yes, let's
maybe I
do
should
it.
have been Tim Run Your Mouth. I don't have any merch next to me. I was gonna pull it up and have merch, but it's fine.
So take us through. Obviously, you do a lot of different things, comedian stuff. I saw on Inside Edition because I always review for my interviews that when people were calling a Jerry Seinfeld film, I believe, or not a Jerry
Deep
Seinfeld one.
research. This is deep research.
Yeah, and you were on there saying that, college kids just need to like, cut it to the chase, like it's a joke. Hello there. So yeah, that was like 6 years ago on Inside Edition. So I don't know where you're living at the time, if it was New York City or LA or Dallas still. But I always do my research. So for you, obviously, being in the world of entertainment like that, how has the conservatism drawn to you?
I've always been that way. It's. I grew up poor in Baltimore, and so my parents taught me personal responsibility. And if you're gonna make it, it's up to you. And so that's kind of where it is. Like that's conservatism. It's self-reliance. It's not relying on not wanting the government to be in your life and not taking handouts. And we could have very easily taken handouts. So I grew up very poor, and we worked with a church community and just kind of learned like we helped others when we had nothing to help others with, you know. And so conservatism to me is just not being reliant on the government and making sure the government's as small as possible and not intrusive in people's lives. So that's kind of how I just was, that's how I was raised. I mean, I could have easily gotten a lot of handouts coming up because of how poor we were and the demographics of the area I came out of. And I chose not to.
And I just got to ask this question at the follow-up. You obviously said that you grew up in Baltimore. Hello, Nancy Pelosi's father was mayor. I don't know if
He
he
put
was
up all the
mayor
Civil
when.
War statues.
Wow.
That's like a fact nobody knew about this. You know, when during was it George Floyd or was it another one of the BLM riots where they started getting all the statues removed and tearing down statues? It was Nancy Pelosi who her father, her family who put up all those statues in Baltimore.
Wow. Who would have thought that?
Well, honestly, at this point, I just assume the Democrats did everything.
So growing up in Baltimore, of course, it bridges the big question, and you grew up in poverty. So let's take it a step back for a second. Um, you obviously mentioned free handouts being a big thing. Why do you think so many people are okay with it? Do you think they just don't want to work, or do you think they're just lied to? Because I've always thought, oh, they're lazy, but then I've seen people work their
Mhm.
butt off, you know? Um, what is it, in your opinion?
It's a little bit of everything. It's hard to call somebody lazy if you're brought up in a culture that says that the handouts are a good thing and they're there, so you should take advantage of them. Um, so I can't blame everybody. I think some people take advantage of the system. Some people are just brought up in a system that is broken. Um, but it's hard because I've known people who on both sides of the coin on this, and I because not only did I grow up in Baltimore, I went to law school there. I was trained as a public defender in law school, and I did a lot of community service work there. Afterwards, I got to learn a lot about the Baltimore community. And where basically Democrats have completely failed them because Democrats are the only people who've been in charge there for years. Um, it's hard. I'm gonna go back to that. That's like I sound like a politician here trying to come up with a solid answer instead of like the comedian that I am. But like, it's very hard to place blame on someone for a culture that they have the only culture maybe they've known that's been cultivated by the government. And then I just can't blame people for taking handouts that haven't been taught to know better. And then occasionally you get, self-starters out of those communities and folks work and earn money. But no, it's we were taught, I mean, look, I grew up in the hood, so like it's like um, if it's free, take it. That's it. And that's and why wouldn't you? And it takes a lot to break that system.
And that guides me to my next question, which is, what is it like? Let's just get it out there. What is it like being white growing up in the hood? Let's hope that they
Uh,
don't censor
I
this,
didn't think
but
about
I
it.
think it's a
No, I didn't think about
legitimate
it.
question. You didn't?
I,
Okay.
I never no, there were friends and basically family, man. Like there's no I have jokes about it on stage, but like the thing is, and more affecting me is, and I'm gonna sound like a bad conservative here. When I was trained as a public defender and I worked with some of the folks with the public defender's office in law school, I learned how corrupt the cops were in Baltimore. And so the big shift for me as a conservative is, when an unarmed black guy gets shot. And it becomes a national story, which how many people get shot in Baltimore and Chicago, and then shame on the media for taking one story and trying to like basically cause civil unrest with it, which is I think disgusting and treasonous. Um, but I automatically think the cop did something wrong. It's a 50-50 on me. And a lot of times I see conservatives wrongfully rush to be like, well, this guy's a convicted felon, blah blah blah. Like I could have fixed his life. You never know. And you never know the facts of the situation. But for me, my default when something like that happens in a major metropolitan area like a Chicago or a Baltimore or like the Freddie Gray thing in Baltimore. I don't know if you know how much about that, but like when he died in police custody, I'm like, I don't know, man. Like Marilyn Mosby was a terrible. I think she was a district attorney. Is that what they call her there? Or attorney? Yeah, district attorney. But man, for a criminal to die and while in custody, there are so many eyes on them the whole time. So, like I always, there's got to be some fault there on the cops. But there's just a lot of stuff. Like I just take a look at the fuller picture, I think is the way to say it with this, because you, people rush to judgment because they like, okay, it's my fault tweeting. It's sort of like idiocracy. So you want to get the quickest, dumbest thing out as fast as possible, get your opinion out there, and see if it travels and gets you the clicks. I always reserve my opinion on those things because I've seen enough from cops in my day, bad cops, and dumb ones. I mean, I'm not saying that all of them are. Obviously, there are 99% are great. There's 1% that are just meh.
And I think you absolutely are correct on that. I don't typically admit if I'm ever agreeing with the guest on something, but I think we can all agree on that across the board,
Yeah.
no matter what
Y-
you are on that.
What makes
So
it worse? Here's what makes it worse, though. Boy, you bring me on for a personal interview, and here we go. Here's Tim's take on cops. The problem is when there's a bad actor and they circle the wagons on the bad actor. And I understand the fraternity of police and stuff like that, but when there's a bad actor, you gotta weed him out. You can't just protect him.
that's a bold take right there.
Yeah.
And you kind of saw that with going back for a second on this with George Floyd. Why? Because that cop, Derek Chauvin, if I'm correct, had I think 13 or 14 like counts, and Amy Klobuchar of all people was like the district prosecutor or district attorney at the time, one of those things, and it's up to her to like decide like who can stay on a police force after like 13 violations. But the unions had protected Derek Chauvin. And, being in a private sector, that if you had one person show up for a comedy show 20 times in a row, somebody might cut you. They're not going to bring you back. Well, in the public sector, you can have more strikes on you. That is just a fact. It's really hard to fire people in the public sector. So, uh,
Well, and
found
I don't
that
want to
interesting.
I don't want to relitigate this, but Derek Chauvin didn't necessarily have it looked like his knee was kind of on his back and not his neck at all. And then we don't know about the fentanyl thing with George Floyd. There are a lot of that is the perfect storm of I really think the media obviously affected that more, and then you've got the entire Democratic caucus or whatever in the House taking a knee with a kente cloth on. It's ridiculous. But like the outrage about that, I think, is what convicted Derek Chauvin, not his actual actions. Because if you take a look at it and you had all the different angles and like, I mean, he was on him for too long, I'll tell you that. But I can't. It's just like, what if
I don't think
everybody?
racism played a factor in it. I
No,
don't.
no, not at all.
He
But
would have done that to anybody. He would have had his knee on me for 20 minutes. And if this gets out there, that's the truth. He was
The,
look, he had counts on him as a cop, and I honestly think he was just a madman, and I'm not gonna lie. I thought he had a beautiful wife, and I'm saying that as
that's
a
why you're
19-year-old.
biased?
So no, I
Gee.
know, but I'm saying that because I don't know why the guy screwed up his life one day. Quite frankly, I've never
Well,
understood that
you
part.
never know what you're going through at that point, and being a cop in Minneapolis and any of those areas like will change you very quickly. I mean, you go in for public service, and then you're like, I always talk about that with like local media, right? They think they're going to go win like Murrow Awards and Emmys and stuff like that, and there they are doing the traffic 25 years later, and you only get recognized at the Piggly Wiggly, and you're working in no offense, Bismarck, North Dakota, or something like that. But like it's like a perfect storm of there's always this option that no one ever sees, right? There's the gray area where it's like maybe everybody's a little bit wrong, and that's how we got here. I mean, the fact is that boy, hey, Tim Young talks about George Floyd. That's the that should be the headline of this entire thing. The store clerk called the police on George Floyd for a fake $20 bill. Was that necessary? Really? Like, I
No,
mean, was that police response necessary for a fake $20 bill? No. So again, there's like, what a waste of like for me saying like government's too big and we need to be taking care of problems and crime in inner cities. Was that response necessary for a fake $20 bill? No, no. So there we
that's
go.
valid.
Everyone is wrong. Everyone was wrong. But I can tell you, I was there. So I was traveling the country for the Washington Times during COVID at that point, and I was doing the effect of COVID on small businesses, covering it for him. And I ended up in Minneapolis, St. Paul during the George Floyd riots, and that was a whole nother thing where the people who were agitating and destroying things and destroying black-owned businesses, which is ridiculous. And disgusting on top of everything else that the community is going through with all the pressure from the media and the left from like everything is racist. They were outside agitators, and like the story wasn't covered during the day when like the neighborhood and the residents, the actual residents and the business owners were cleaning up the streets, and like it was warm and fuzzy, and everybody had come together. The only stories that were getting covered were at night when everything was burning to the ground. So it's kind of disgusting there too. I hate the media, by the way, even though I'm a part of it.
Alternative media is the way to go now, which we're seeing. Um,
Yeah.
so take us through real quick, because I know you're a busy man, but what is something that you are kind of, which by the way, thank you for your story about being a public defender,
I wasn't a public
because
defender. I was just trained as one. I never practiced.
trained as a,
I made one of my classmates cry during a fake essay case, and um, I was like, I'm good at this, and it scared me. And the problem is once you get a criminal off for that, because say a witness incorrectly says their testimony or police mishandled evidence or something like that, which is what you're trained to do as a public defender, and it kind of it becomes a fun game until you realize that when you let the criminal back out, the next crime's on you, and I would feel personally responsible for that, and I just never wanted to practice after that.
that's a good point. And then going forward, of course, what is something to you that, I guess, what issue are you most passionate about? Obviously, I always like to close with advice that people have for young people, but what is something that you're passionate about when it comes to a specific issue if you had to pick one? And would you ever run for public office? A two-part question.
Oh, is this the last question already? Have I like killed our
No,
time
it's
with
not.
George
No, you're
Floyd?
good.
Oh my God. All right. Okay. So personal liberty, personal freedom. Obviously, that includes free speech and being able to continue saying what I want to say. I mean, at this point, I'll be very honest with you. I am afraid to travel to the UK or Germany because now UK is obviously locking up people for memes. Germany has done the same and criticism of their government, which I've done. And I would get those notifications in Twitter. We had to notify you that you're not in violation of German law, even though you were reported for being in violation of German law. You get those emails. They kind of stopped when Elon took over, but they're still there. So like, I'm actually afraid until Trump has an ambassador in either country, not company, uh, to travel to those countries because I'm afraid of being locked up. And I work with Great Britain News right now, and like I told them that, and they laughed, and I'm like, I don't know, guys. They're probably looking to make an example of some guy. On the running for office thing, I've been asked by large organizations multiple times. I've turned them down now multiple times to run for Congress. So I think it would be a terrible and boring job, and it doesn't pay enough for what you do. And if you're an honest person, it absolutely doesn't pay enough. So if you take a look at it, and I know this is ridiculous because it's like, oh, it's like $180,000 or whatever it is, or 160,000, whatever they make. So if you're an honest person and you're not like on the take or your family's not like doing whatever, you're not investing real well. Even then, you can't cash in on the investments right away. You need to get an apartment in DC, which is an extra 3,000 a month, and then you got
Or you can
travel
live
back.
in your office. You can live in your office. Some
Do they
do.
allow that now? I don't think
I
they
think
do.
like 30 or 40 people.
That's ridiculous. And those are your honest people because I mean, so I lived in DC for off and on like 10-ish years. Um, and so honest people, either live in your office, which is or because you don't want your office to stink. It would eventually stink. Um, but you're paying 3,000 a month, and then for family travel to go back and forth to the district, which I'd imagine my to-be wife would travel with me a bunch. I mean, you're basically done on money right there. Like your 180,000 or whatever, or 160,000 is done after taxes right there.
And they do pay money for travel going there and back for yourself, I know, or for your
But not for
staff.
family. Yeah,
Wow.
I believe for family.
And that just leads to the point of why somebody like Bernie Sanders or AOC is selling books. I mean, if we are being
Oh,
real, and I'm
money
not gonna lie, so I had two perspectives on this real quick, which was one was, okay, I'd rather want them selling books using their fame and their Twitter following to sell books than to like be involved in corruption in Ukraine, right?
Yeah.
And then my second thought is, well, I wouldn't want somebody to just be in Congress and be the famous puppet around posting outrageous things that make no sense on X, which is quite frankly Marjorie Taylor Greene and AOC. But then I thought, shit, if they don't do that, you just mentioned they're taking money from investments somewhere else, like Nancy Pelosi over 50, 60, 70 years almost at this point. So what's your perspective on that?
Books are money laundering. I don't think people buy books anymore. I really don't think people buy books anymore. So like when, I know both sides do this. When somebody comes out with a book, organizations buy boxes and boxes of those books, and private people buy boxes and boxes of the books. It's a way to get people millions of dollars that, through a seemingly innocent means. Um,
Like Mike Pence.
is he still around? What's he do? Did he have a book? Of course he
Yeah,
did.
so help me God. I've met him a few times. He's a nice person. He's
Totally
kind of
nice
got
guy.
like the mic. He just, I think he would probably be the best teacher I could have if he came up to Purdue and became a professor. In fact, at some point, I'm supposed to interview him. Don't know if they're going to
Wow.
do that today or Trump one or yourself, but he did do a book on it, and then Nikki Haley's did a book too before she had ran for president. So they
What
all
a
do it.
worthless, what a worthless clown she is. I mean, dude, so I'm really anti-war now. I've turned into, you're 19, so you weren't even alive.
Everybody's anti-war, and I keep telling my parents this. They're like, "We need to keep funding these things," and I'm like, "No, nobody wants to keep funding any of these things."
You weren't alive when, oh man, you're so young. That's what it like hits me sometimes when I talk to like kids like you. I'm like the crotchety old man now. But I mean, George W. Bush. So when we did after 9/11 went into
To
Iraq
pause
and
for a second, I've had
yeah,
Dan Quill on, so
I know.
I kind of know a little bit about the older history of some of this stuff. So
Well, he's before that. Did you ask him about potato when you had him on?
I didn't because I had him on for 9 minutes and it was supposed to be by phone call. And I was like, no, come on. I want to see the guy's face. Like, what does he look like now? Because he doesn't do a lot of public things. And bro looks the same. He was cool to talk to. Obviously,
Yeah.
had no stances that I really agreed with from a neoconservative viewpoint. But hey, he was a nice guy and maybe he remembers my name still. I
It's a
enjoyed the
different
nine
time.
minutes.
Listen, it was a different time when he was vice president to the former head of the CIA, which no, like when you realize that George H.W. Bush was the former head of the CIA, you're like, what? And it's like, yeah, yeah, that's like, it's sort of like, not to put him in the same category, Jesus, because it's an enemy, but like Putin was the head of the KGB. Like you look at like the same, you're like, oh, you guys are trained from a group that doesn't necessarily always have peace in mind, and in fact doesn't. All right, what were we talking about? George
George
W.
W.
Oh yeah,
though.
yeah. So like it was like no blood for oil back in the day, and lefties were the left. I literally have every position that a hippie, crunchy lefty had, back in the day now, like anti-big pharma, anti-war, anti-big corporations. Like I am like they're, allowing like wanting mom and pop shops to do well. Like I want to know, and I used to say this on the radio all the time, like I want to know where those crunchy hippies went because I want to like say, hey, sorry for making fun of you in like 2000, 2004. Like, we get along now, but they're all gone. Like I feel like they all went so far left and they continued on their journey to like Trump derangement syndrome and he's a Nazi and the world's going to come to an end and blah 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 blah. But like I am now at that point where like, and it all fits into my like small government, less tax conservatism. I'm like, how did we not reach out to these people back in the day, other than our country was run by neocons and wanted to bomb everybody everywhere and then get involved and get their checks from Raytheon or wherever Nikki Haley's getting her money from. It's crazy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And another thing I wanted to touch on real quick was this is a topic, of course, that's a little more controversial, so I don't want to quite go this route, but
I'll talk about
what's
whatever.
the Israel thing? And I want to be crystal clear. I've had on people of all sides. If
Hmm.
somebody wants to sit down with me from the Palestinian government, I'll do it. If somebody wants to sit down with me from the Israeli government, I'll do it. Not that
Yeah.
Bibi's coming on, but if Bibi wants to sit down, we'll have a conversation. Because again, what is my job? I am here to interview. So
Yeah.
I'll have on somebody from Ukraine if one of the ambassadors of Zelensky wants to
You can
come
get
on.
a
We'll
you
have
can
the
there are a lot
conversation.
of female porn stars that claim to be from Ukraine, so maybe
Wow.
you talk to them and then you get
We'll
their
have the conversation if they
deep
want it. And
thoughts.
same with Russia. So
Maybe.
I want to make that crystal clear in case this gets
Yeah.
out there that Jacob liked one country more than another. Well, first off, I love America. But second to that, we'll have on anybody at any time. So what's your kind of
Mhm.
thought on, I guess, just the money going overseas?
No, I hate it.
That's going to be
I hate it. So
controversial, I feel like, but
here's they are our singular strategic ally in that region, period. They are just our singular strategic ally around a lot of people who want to end the West. So on that level, because I don't have a direct response to this. Like I have a ton of Jewish friends too. And I always like it when I take a stance that's pro-Israel online, like all this, there's this really crazy hate Israel crowd now on Twitter and X. And I'm like, what the hell is happening here? So it's a twofold thing for me. So strategically, we need them as an ally. We should support them. Christianity, like as a Christian, like we should support them and help them help Israel survive. And I'd like to protect like the parts of the Bible that still exist there, like the kind of like religious spots there from being destroyed by people who hate us and hate the West and hate Christianity. So like there are a couple of factors there on that. On the other hand, I don't I like it's not our war. Like I just like I'm so tired of throwing our money at all sorts of crazy shit and Ukraine screwed this up for me. So like the COVID vaccine, boy, you're gonna have to do a lot of bleeping or whatever for YouTube for this. The COVID vaccine screwed up vaccines for me, right? The Ukraine war screwed up foreign involvement for me because it's so egregious. And then when you take a look at other things, you're like, why have we done this? Like, aren't they self-sufficient enough? Can't they take care of themselves? Like, why do we need to keep sending gobs and gobs of money? So like it's a 50-50 for me. Like, look, I respect Israel as a state and I like my Jewish friends and I love Israel as an ally and we need them as an ally in that region the same hand, I'm tired of America funding other people's wars. D does Israel taking out Hezbollah and terrorists and taking on Iran help us out? Yeah, it does. So does Ukraine shooting at Russia help us out? No, it doesn't. There's there are it's so weird when people take a look at this and when they discuss Israel Palestine, it's always like they either hate the Jews or they're like really really positive on Israel. And I lean positive on Israel because I am positive on Israel and I obviously have no problems with anybody's religion or faith or anything like that, which is super weird, by the way. Like the people that really hate Jewish people. Um, but like we shouldn't be funding people's wars on the same hand. So like it's such a here I am with a nuanced response, and I don't think people
support the
get
people, but not the government in the war.
Yeah, like I mean, but on the same hand, oh, they're wiping out a terrorist organization and taking out Iran's capabilities. Okay. I mean, like Iran regularly chants "Death to America, death to the West." And they would attack us if given the opportunity. I'm sure they have tried. I mean, there was obviously a plot to take out Trump at one point here. One of the many suicide. I don't think we hear about all of the suicide. One of you're gonna have to bleep so much on this. Uh, one of the many assassination attempts that we actually heard about. I'm sure there's many more that we don't hear about, and Secret Service is good with it. But which, by the way, you want to go back into nuanced conversation, like the Secret Service really effed up. If not, we're involved because I'll be a crazy. I'll put my tinfoil hat on the day that of Butler when Trump survived. God bless him. But overall, the Secret Service are good people. Like again, it's like everything is nuanced. There's not a black and white answer to everything, and that's really the problem that, it's kind of I would call it the idiocracy problem in America, right? Is that everyone has this black and white response. You see George Floyd, there's a black and white response. You see, and not by race, I mean, you see Israel, it's black and white. When you see, like police and law enforcement, black and white response. A lot of the time, there should not be a direct one-liner, and the one-liners and the quick hits are what make your clicks and get you on the media, and you look like an idiot, or people cheer for you or not. But um, yeah, the Israel situation, like I want to defend them. Love the people. But I mean, why are we the ones funding? Like we shouldn't be funding wars all around the country, all around the world.
No doubt about it. And then the other thing I always like to close with is, which by the way, I don't like to give my take, but in a conversation like this, I will say it. The people are never the bad ones. When we say that
No,
we don't like China, real quick, I'll just say the Chinese people are great. The government, no. Next question. That's how I am about it. I've been in college, as you can imagine. I've been in groups, especially at a school like Purdue University for STEM, of people from all different backgrounds. And it's not the people, but absolutely, if they were to ask me about the government, I'd probably say I'm just not a fan of the CCP. And that's the truth. So, not against the people ever, like you said. So, very good take and observation there.
well, the same thing with
I always,
what we talked about handouts. I mean, it's like when you're I can't blame somebody who's been trained and basically taught by their government, and there's been a culture created for them to behave in a way.
For sure. And I always like to close with advice for young people. Obviously, you've been in different backgrounds in life. Kind of give us like a minute pitch. What would be your key advice you'd have?
I talked about this on my podcast last night because I had watched a couple of your shows because I pay attention. I did some research. Joe Theismann, good one. There you go. Yeah, you had a
Thank
bunch of
you.
people on it. Some lady, some girl that's going to Mars. Was that girl really going to Mars, or was she just kind of in a car somewhere driving home?
Uh,
See,
she's got
I
like
watched the product.
500,000. Yeah, she's got like 500,000 followers, ironically.
For
So,
what?
on Instagram. So like her
She
dad
putting her
kind of
butt on the
pushed it.
internet, or like what's
Well,
the?
she's had like some Gap sponsorship, so congrats to her. She's I think 21, 22, so I can say I think she was good looking and congrats. I hope she does land on Mars. I had on the Jared Isaacman guy, SpaceX guy who did that private space flight. So,
Well, that's a
um,
real person.
but
I
thanks for listening. Continue.
no, see, like I no, I just like she's and I know you didn't pay for the thing, the Zoom, so we got 7 minutes and 41
Yeah.
seconds. I see that claw. I see the ticker. Um,
Yeah.
I can't stand, by the way, it's one of the things I can't stand is like, how hard it is to make it in media as a guy. Like if I was like a blonde hot chick, I would be like, is it right? Like it's like, and then you see that whatever your little space, whatever her Mars walker thing, she probably put that. I don't know. I didn't dig. But if
There
her
was
butt's on the
also,
internet, usually guys.
well, real quick, sorry to interrupt. There was also a quick thing about how she had for her, like there was a meme going around that she was going to be the first one to walk on Mars, and that's how I found out about her. And then searched her up on Instagram and found her website and thought, she's pretty and she's going to have a bright future and she's smart like that. So there was kind of a meme that went with her saying that she was walking on Mars in 2025 during like 2020. So that kind of also got her fame up. But sorry to
Gotcha.
interrupt. Continue
Okay,
going on
no,
about
usually
advice you have.
usually it's just butt pics. If I were talking to me years ago, and I went to undergrad, got a degree in psychology, got a law degree, went back to grad school and almost wrapped up a doctorate in public policy, and I had like one course and one. and just the dissertation left. And I dropped out of the program because I was just sick of it at that point. I was sick of the people there. My advice to young people, man, I'm going Charlie Kirk on this. Like, I'm glad you're at Purdue, get your degree. If I could do it all over again, I would read books. I would go take a first I would go take a 6 month training course on HVAC. And I would by 30 be a millionaire, if not earlier. If I instead of going to college at 18, went and learned and apprenticed doing like HVAC, so like, air conditioning, heating, um, I would have been a millionaire probably before I was 30 with no debt. And I could have read books on the side and been in the same. I mean, it's not a pretty job, right? You show up in a van, you fix people's air conditioning, you're crawling around. Yeah, but those people are making really good money, like 100K plus to do that. And then you start your own business out of it, and then you have other people doing the dirty work while you're running that business. You could be a millionaire with no debt, no college debt whatsoever, before you're 30 if you're playing that game right. And that's like so like Charlie Kirk is like college is a scam. In some places it is. I mean,
It depends on what you're
I'm
doing,
it depends on what you're doing.
If you want to go work for Raytheon,
Yeah.
you'll make a lot of money. Go to Purdue University. You're going to get no sleep for 4 years, but you'll come out making 100 grand, no doubt about it,
The
maybe even more.
the first 2 years of law school were the money for me. That's where I got all of my like life training and knowledge and really, really, really learned. Everything else I thought was kind of filler. I mean, my literature course in undergrad was comic book literature. Like, get out of here. And it was an honors course for that at that. So like Charlie Kirk is right. Um, on the other hand, though, I'm like I look at it and like, and I think he said this too. Like I'm on the Mike Rowe side of things with this, where Mike Rowe's like, go get a dirty job and you'll be rich. Like, yeah, I wish I would have done that. Mike Rowe is right. Both of them are right. Like there are a lot of what you're really fortunate to have, by the way, is a Turning Point USA and a Charlie Kirk and people like Mike Rowe that are out saying that kind of stuff and conservatives that are like, hey, there are other things other than sitting through college. Because when I came up, I was in the neocon era, and all we knew was you go to college, you get your degree. Again, that's the culture that I was brought up in. You're smart, so you go to college, get your degree, and then you come out and do something. Man, if I would have thought like, and again, like not taking a dirty job was like, ugh. But go get your HVAC certificate and go make $100,000 a year with no debt, and you don't have to listen to anybody else other than your boss, who's probably cool as shit. And that's it. I would do that. That's my advice to young people is drop out of college and go get or like learn how to fix cars. It's another one pays pretty well.
Wow. Well, we appreciate you sharing your feedback.
Yeah. 10
And
years in college, and I'm saying don't go to college.
well, thank you so much, Tim, for joining the show today.
Thanks for having me.